So I think the big news of the year for crypto, outside of the all-time highs that we saw in March, are the launch of the spot Bitcoin ETFs. Really, it's just been met with these blockbuster flows, a lot of institutions coming into the space. How are you feeling about Bitbee's revenue so far?
Feeling good. I think, like you said, it was a huge success across the board for all of the issuers. And leading up to that, it felt very slow for the 5 years we were working on it. And then suddenly it was very fast towards the end to get over the hump and get to an actual approval of these products. And I think it's been a huge game changer for the industry to show institutions coming in, to show that these products work. Right? Like, we worked on them for so long from a research standpoint. Bitwise at heart is a research company. That is our core, and that's what we spent so many years working with the regulators to really just show them, look, here's our research, here's how this product would work, here's why it's going to be okay, here's how it's worked outside the United States successfully for many years. And that was a back and forth process, and it's actually a process you want. We could have used it being a little shorter from our perspective, but it's a process you want. You do want the regulator poking and prodding and making sure that this isn't going to be, have a bad impact on the market. And as we saw, taking the academic and the research side to actuality of post-launch, they've been a screaming success. And the fact of having a number of issuers come out at once was really beneficial for the pricing for the ultimate investor, because it put some competition out there, which was a very different story from when the Bitcoin futures launched, where it was really a king-making situation because there was one issuer at that point who still has the majority, the lion's share of the assets. So it creates a very different scenario to allow for a number of issuers to come out of the gate at the same time, which was the scenario for the spot Bitcoin ETFs.
And collectively, there are $58 billion worth of assets under management across all of the spot Bitcoin ETFs. The latest figures that I saw for Bitwise, 2.4 billion, so around 5% of the total market. You guys have a competitive fee right now. What's the plan to try to capture more of the market? Or do you think that you're pacing exactly as you wanted to at this point?
I think we're going to stay the course at this juncture. I can't talk too much about our own product, unfortunately, but we're really happy with where we are, and we're also really happy about staying the course as the crypto specialist. And so much of that is actually somewhat behind the scenes, really, in terms of the relationships, the agreements, the ability to trade, to keep spreads tight. All of that inures to the benefit of the ultimate investor. So I think some of that behind the scenes that we benefit from, having been in the crypto market for so long, is having that expertise in how to trade the product and keep those spreads tight, things of that nature that is so important for getting the best market for the ultimate investor and keeping it in a good margin.
Now, last week, the SEC approved a rules change that would essentially pave the way for spot Ether ETFs. Were you surprised by that decision?
We were pretty surprised. This is public information, we're one of the would-be issuers of a spot ETH product, and it had been many months of silence. There were no signs of life out in the ether, no pun intended. So the thought was that we were leading towards a disapproval order, and we were getting ready, we were looking forward actually to seeing that disapproval order to see, okay, well, what are the bona fides behind it? And then as a research organization, what can we do to help get the regulator comfortable? So we were very surprised to see the shift go and come over towards getting an approval order for those 19B4s.
Aside from the silent period that you mentioned preceding that decision, have you been having productive conversations with the SEC? What did that interaction look like?
Yeah, I mean, from Bitwise's perspective, we've had over the years a number of very productive conversations with the SEC. As they're learning about different products, they want to know. The SEC invites members of the industry to come in and say, hey, we're thinking about this product. So you can have that academic discussion and see, okay, well, what would be the hurdles? What would be the concerns? So over the years, including prior to the spot Bitcoin launch, we've had a back and forth with research information that we've provided, step function in response to different questions that the SEC raised over incremental time periods about concerns and how we would address their concerns about potential fraud manipulation in the market. So we would provide our research, they would look through the research, we would respond with additional research. And so it's a very productive ongoing dialogue with regard to the research. In fact, actually, in the approval orders from last week, the Bitwise research is specifically called out, which was nice to see.
So many of the industry have said, please legislate, give us hard and fast rules so that we know how to operate within a set regulatory framework. To that end, we've seen more progress this year. So I'm thinking of Fit 21 passing the House. I'm thinking about stablecoin legislation from both the House and the Senate, seeming to be getting a lot more support than past bills that have failed to make it out of Congress. On top of all of that, you've also got Congress passing a rollback of crypto accounting rules that were implemented by the SEC. How optimistic, though, are you that these things will pass before this session ends at the end of the year?
Well, SAB 121 was that repeal went through, so we'll see exactly what happens with the Biden administration on that front. So that's a huge win, and that was like the first foot in the water. But we are seeing a sea change with the receptivity of the Biden administration towards at least embracing and having better dialogue with the crypto industry, as opposed to what the Biden administration has done before, which was really just rely upon the SEC to control the agenda there. So you're seeing the Biden administration step in response to the noise on the campaign trail with Trump making positive statements about crypto. So this is great. It's now become, surprisingly, an issue in the campaign because Trump has come out as pro-crypto and is backing that up with some good facts and forward motion. In response, you're seeing a softening in the Biden administration to receptivity to talking about crypto. The Biden administration didn't come out and say back Fit 21, but they didn't come out with as strong an opposition to Fit 21 as they did with the SAB 121 repeal, where they came out with a pre-veto stance. So you're seeing just in a very short time period, a steep decline in the vehemence of the Biden administration against being anti-crypto. So all of that is great. To your shorter question about whether we see anything happen this year on Fit 21, I don't think, unfortunately, we'll see anything with Fit 21 this year, but that's just quite simply because we're running out of time in the congressional calendar and we are in a presidential election year, which shortens it more than is ordinarily the case. However, just the fact of Fit 21 passing on the House floor, a bipartisan passage, and the number of folks that brought a yes vote for it is tremendous progress. And that in and of itself is definitely something that we look forward to taking that momentum and working towards getting better market structure, because it needs to happen. And it's been far too long that we've had it. We've just gone through waves of time, right? First was the time period of the complete ignoring of crypto. Maybe it'll go away. If we ignore it, we're not putting a stamp of approval on it, to the middle period of a lot of enforcement actions, which you do need some of that, of course, because there's always going to be a need for enforcement actions. But with too much enforcement actions against parties that may not necessarily be in the wrong, then you're creating a situation where businesses are afraid to jump in and you do stifle innovation. So we need the just right amount of enforcement and against the right parties. So that was that middle period. Now I'm hoping we're coming out of that middle period of too much enforcement and not enough rules and regulations, and more, let's think about it. Let's roll up our sleeves and actually come up with some foundational definitions, instructions, jurisdictional lines between the SEC and CFTC, and that will really help with making sure that businesses know the rules of the road.
So you mentioned the fact that, in the end, Biden didn't veto SAB 121. We saw that go through. A lot of people were surprised that he even weighed in on it in the first place because it was pretty niche legislation. So it seemed he was going out of his way to express an anti-crypto sentiment. And again, as you noted, so much of the industry saw this about face, and it seemed pegged to the timing of Trump announcing that he would accept crypto donations. Last week at the Libertarian National Convention in D.C., as you said, very bullish sentiment on crypto expressed there. And you've got, at this event, RFK, who's been at virtually every single crypto event that I've gone to.
Just saw him outside here.
Yeah, very expressly pro-Bitcoin. And I bring this up again just because of the fact that a recent Harris poll showed that crypto is increasingly a big topic of interest for voters, and it matters to more than it has in past presidential election cycles. Do you think that this is something that could potentially move the needle, and that's why you're seeing this softening of stance by Biden and Trump really leaning in?
I think that's absolutely the basis for it. That seems to me the explanation of why we've seen this shift in attitude from the Biden administration. Like, we're not going to ignore it. We're going to look into it. We're going to call upon the crypto community and, at a minimum, start more conversations about it. So I think that softening in stance was rapid, but it's informative in terms of why it's happening.
Last question for you. So, Chief Compliance Officer, what keeps you up at night when you think about the crypto sector more broadly?
What keeps me up at night is just thinking about some of the enforcement actions in our ecosystem, right? They can come after not just us, but one of the other businesses, and I want to make sure that that's directed towards where it should be. Like those, as I've said before, those energies and those enforcement actions, you do need that. It's an important aspect that a regulator has, but if it's overused, you end up creating scenarios where when you're a business trying to figure out how to do your business, you're having to pick through specific facts and circumstances unique to those enforcement actions in those cases, as opposed to looking at actual legislation, market structure legislation, and being able to look to that as your guideline, right? It's just so much more efficient to have the market structure legislation in place than to have to pick through enforcement actions or old case law, right? That just makes it much more expensive and puts a lot more in the gray area that just doesn't need to be in the gray area. Let's pull that out of the gray area and work at evolving our approach to crypto, because I think that's what would be so much better for all of us, not just us, but all the businesses that are in this space.